They called it Raven Hollow, a quiet place, barely a speck on the map, nestled somewhere in the hills of northern Vermont. Some locals swore it never existed. Others whispered that it did, but only once a year. No one really knew when the story started or who told the first one. Maybe it was a hiker, lost and delirious. Maybe a lonely old man in a bar, sipping rye and weaving tales. But the name persisted, passed from lips in diners, barbershops, and online forums like a strange melody. Raven Hollow, the town that appears only once a year. For Mark Harrison, it started with a letter. He was 28, recently laid off from his tech job in Boston, and back in his hometown of Hartville, licking his wounds and contemplating a future that suddenly seemed like fog. When the envelope arrived, no return address, thick parchment, sealed with red wax. It was like something out of a movie. He tore it open and read the words, written in delicate, spidery handwriting. July 29th, 7:03 p.m., at the foot of Hollow Ridge. You'll see it. No signature, no explanation, just a date, a time, and a place. For a moment, Mark had laughed. Junk mail, obviously. Some weird viral stunt, or maybe a prank. But he couldn't throw it away. He placed it on his desk and returned to it the next day. And the next, something about the handwriting nagged at him. Something about the way his name was printed. His full name, middle initial, and all just felt personal. By the morning of July 29th, the curiosity had taken root. He packed a backpack with water, a flashlight, his phone, and a pocket knife. Hollow Ridge wasn't far, just an hour's drive. He told his mom he was going hiking to clear his head, then left before she could question him further. The road to Hollow Ridge was overgrown and winding. His car rattled over potholes and gravel, the forest pressing him like silent sentries. He parked by a rusted no trespassing sign and followed an old logging trail, pushing past saplings and brush. The woods were quiet, too quiet. At precisely 7:03 p.m., Mark crested the ridge and stopped. There it was. Below him, nestled in a narrow valley, lay a town that shouldn't be there. Wooden houses with white porches, a small church with a steeple, a gas station, a diner with a neon sign that flickered weakly in the twilight, Maggie's Pie and Coffee. Smoke curled from chimneys. Lamps glowed behind windows. It looked like something out of the 1950s, untouched by time. Mark blinked, rubbed his eyes, took out his phone. No signal. He descended the ridge slowly, the leaves crunching beneath his boots. At the town's edge, an old man sat in a rocking chair on a porch, reading a newspaper. Evening, the man said without looking up. Mark hesitated. Evening. What town is this? The old man folded his paper. Raven Hollow, he said, as though it were the most normal thing in the world. Mark stepped closer. Do you know that your town isn't on any map? The man smiled, but there was something unreadable behind his eyes. Is that so? Well, not everything worth finding is on a map. Mark nodded slowly. You've always lived here? All my life, the man replied. And yours too, in a way. Mark frowned. What does that mean? The man chuckled. You'll figure it out. And with that, he returned to his paper. Mark walked the streets in a daze. Everything looked lived in, but there were no cars, no buzzing phones. The people, there weren't many, smiled as he passed, but no one seemed surprised to see him. At the diner, a woman with curly gray hair and cat-eye glasses greeted him like an old friend. Mark Harrison, she said, pouring coffee without being asked. You came. You know my name? Of course, she said. I'm Maggie. Sit down, hon. You must be starving. He slid into a booth, heart pounding. The coffee smelled real. The pie looked fresh. People moved in the background like actors in play, perfectly choreographed. This town, how long has it been here? He asked. Maggie glanced out the window. Oh, Raven Hollow's been around a long time, but it only shows itself when it wants to. Why me? She studied him, her expression softening. Sometimes people need to remember. Remember what? But she just smiled and served him a slice of warm apple pie. As the evening deepened, Mark wandered more. He passed a schoolhouse with a rusted bell, a barbershop, a general store. He began to notice that the faces looked familiar, not from memory, but from photographs, old black and white ones he'd seen in his grandmother's attic. People who should have been dead decades ago. At the church, he found the doors open and a choir singing softly, though no one was inside. The pews were empty. The air was thick with incense and something else, something old and aching. He backed out slowly. Near the town square, a young woman sat on a bench, feeding pigeons. She looked about his age, with chestnut hair and eyes like amber. "Hi," Mark said cautiously. She looked up, startled, but only for a moment. "Mark, yeah, have we met? You don't remember me." Her voice was sad, almost hurt. He sat beside her. "Should I? We were kids. You were 5. I was 4. We played together in this town, the one you forgot." "That's not possible," he said. But even as he said it, memories stirred. A red tricycle, a paper airplane, a song sung under a willow tree. Things he hadn't thought about in 20 years. "Your grandfather brought you here," she said. "Just once. He told you not to tell anyone." "Why?" "Because Raven Hollow isn't meant for the world, only for those it chooses. And it chose you, Mark, like it chose me." He stared at her, stunned. "What is this place?" She looked around, eyes glinting with both joy and sorrow. A memory, a refuge, a warning. Warning, not all who come here leave unchanged. The air grew colder. The streetlights flickered. Somewhere, a dog howled. "You need to decide before sunrise," she whispered. "Stay or go." He laughed nervously. "Stay forever? In a town that vanishes?" "It won't vanish for you. If you stay, you become part of it." Mark shook his head. "But that's impossible." She reached into her pocket and handed him a photograph. It showed him, at 5 years old, standing beside her on that very bench. Behind him, Maggie's diner, a little more run-down but unmistakable. He had no memory of the photo being taken. "Who took this?" he asked. "Your grandfather. Before he left the last time." Mark looked around. Everything felt real. The breeze, the smells, the sounds. But he also knew that if he stayed, he might never be able to return to the life he left behind. His mom, his sister, the world he still had questions about. "What happens if I leave?" "You'll forget again. Until next year. If Raven Hollow wants you back. And if it doesn't, then this is goodbye." The sun was beginning to rise, bleeding gold over the hills. The town shimmered, like heat waves on asphalt. People were already beginning to disappear, fading at the edges, growing translucent. Mark stood. "So, did she? Will I remember your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then kissed his cheek. "Emily." He walked back the ridge, heart pounding. He looked back once, just as the town vanished like smoke. Emily stood in the square, hand raised in farewell. He blinked, and there was nothing. No church, no diner, just woods and silence. He returned to Hartville in a daze, unable to tell anyone what had happened. He tried to write it down. He tried to search the town. Nothing. No records. No maps.